Stop trying to be confident. I know that sounds strange, because everywhere you look, people are telling you to be more confident. Read this book, watch this video, repeat these affirmations, stand taller, speak louder, believe in yourself. But have you ever noticed something? The more desperately you try to be confident, the less confident you actually feel. It's like trying to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more awake you become. And that's exactly what happens with confidence. You start overthinking every conversation, every presentation, every social interaction. You wonder if people like you. You wonder if you sound smart enough. You wonder if you're making a good impression. And while you're busy trying to appear confident, your mind is screaming, "What if I'm not?" I learned something years ago that completely changed the way I think about confidence. Confidence is not something you create first. Confidence is something that appears afterward. That's the secret. And once you understand this, everything changes. Think about riding a bicycle. Nobody becomes confident before learning how to ride. Imagine a child standing beside a bicycle saying, "Once I feel confident, then I'll start." It doesn't work that way. They wobble, they fall, they look awkward, they scrape their knees. And after enough practice, confidence shows up as a result, not as a requirement. Yet somehow, when it comes to speaking, socializing, dating, leadership, business, or life, we reverse the process. We tell ourselves, once I feel confident, then I'll speak up. Once I feel confident, then I'll apply. Once I feel confident, then I'll start the channel. Once I feel confident, then I'll ask the question. And years pass. The confidence never arrives, because confidence was never supposed to come first. Action comes first. Confidence follows. The first lesson is simple. Stop chasing confidence. Start collecting evidence. Most people are trying to convince themselves they're capable. But the brain doesn't believe words. The brain believes proof. Imagine two people preparing for a public speech. The first person stands in front of a mirror repeating, "I am confident, I am confident, I am confident." The second person practices the speech 20 times. Who do you think feels more confident on stage? Of course it's the second person, because confidence isn't built through positive thinking alone, it's built through accumulated evidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you create evidence. Every time you do something difficult, you create evidence. Every time you survive something uncomfortable, you create evidence. Your confidence grows because your brain starts saying, "I've done this before." Think about that. What if confidence isn't a feeling? What if confidence is memory? A memory of challenges you've already survived. That's why the fastest way to become more confident isn't to think differently, it's to act differently. Small actions, repeated consistently. You don't need evidence that you can conquer the world, you just need evidence that you can take the next step. And that leads to something most people completely misunderstand. The second lesson is this: replace confidence with curiosity. When people become nervous, they become self-focused. What do I look like? What if I mess up? What are they thinking about me? Am I good enough? Notice where all the attention is going. Toward yourself. And strangely enough, that's what creates more anxiety. Years ago, before speaking in front of large audiences, I would feel nervous. My heart would race. My palms would sweat. My mind would start creating disaster movies. What if they don't like me? What if I forget my words? What if I embarrass myself? Then I discovered something powerful. The moment I shifted my attention from myself to the audience, everything changed. Instead of asking, "How am I doing?" I started asking, "How can I help?" Instead of thinking, "Do they like me?" I started wondering, what are they struggling with? Instead of focusing on my performance, I focused on my contribution. Curiosity replaced insecurity, and when curiosity enters the room, anxiety often leaves. Imagine walking into a networking event. Instead of trying to impress people, what if your goal was simply to learn something interesting about them? What if you became fascinated by their stories? What if every conversation became an opportunity to discover something new? Suddenly, the pressure disappears. You stop performing. You start connecting. And people can feel the difference because the most magnetic people aren't obsessed with themselves, they're genuinely interested in others. The third lesson might be the most important one. Become comfortable looking foolish. Nobody likes hearing this, but it's true. Many people don't lack confidence. They fear embarrassment. There's a difference. Think about how many opportunities people avoid because they don't want to look bad. They don't speak because they might sound stupid. They don't start because they might fail. They don't try because they might be judged. But here's a question. What if looking foolish is actually the price of growth? Every expert was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once stumbled over their words. Every successful entrepreneur once made mistakes. Every skilled communicator once felt awkward. We admire the finished product, but we forget the messy beginning. I remember watching recordings of some of my early presentations. Honestly, they were painful. My delivery was awkward. My timing was off. My energy wasn't where it needed to be. If I had judged myself based on those early attempts, I might have quit. But improvement requires temporary embarrassment. You cannot become great at something while avoiding the beginner stage. And the beginner stage always looks a little ridiculous. The irony is that confident people aren't confident because they never look foolish. They're confident because they're no longer terrified of looking foolish. That's freedom. Imagine how different your life would be if embarrassment stopped controlling your decisions. How many opportunities would you take? How many conversations would you start? How many dreams would finally move from imagination into reality? Now, here's another lesson that changed my life. Stop measuring yourself against people. Measure yourself against your previous self. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to destroy confidence, especially today. You open social media and instantly see people who seem smarter, richer, more attractive, more successful, more talented, and more accomplished. And without realizing it, you start running a race you were never supposed to enter. You compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20. You compare your behind the scenes to their highlight reel, and then you wonder why you feel inadequate. Imagine planting a seed. Would you dig it up every day to see why it hasn't become a tree yet? Of course not. Growth takes time, yet that's exactly what people do to themselves. They keep comparing their current progress to someone else's outcome. The healthier question isn't, am I better than them? The healthier question is, am I better than I was 6 months ago? Because confidence grows when you notice progress, not perfection. Progress. Maybe you're still nervous speaking, but you're less nervous than before. Maybe you're still shy, but you're starting more conversations. Maybe you're still uncertain, but you're taking more action. That's growth, and growth deserves recognition. The final lesson ties everything together. Build trust with yourself. Most confidence problems are actually trust problems. Think about it. If a friend promised you something every day and broke that promise every day, would you trust them? Probably not. Now, here's the uncomfortable question. How often do you do that to yourself? You say you'll wake up early, you don't. You say you'll practice, you don't. You say you'll start, you don't. You say you'll take the risk, you don't. And over time, your subconscious starts paying attention. It starts saying, I don't trust this person, because every promise becomes another piece of evidence. This works in both directions. Break promises repeatedly, and trust disappears. Keep promises repeatedly, and trust grows. Confidence is often the visible result of self-trust. When you trust yourself, you walk differently. You speak differently. You make decisions differently. Not because you're certain of success, but because you're certain you'll handle whatever happens. That's real confidence. Not the belief that everything will go perfectly. The belief that you'll be okay even if it doesn't. And that changes everything. Because suddenly, failure becomes less frightening. Rejection becomes less threatening. Mistakes become less painful. You stop needing guarantees before taking action. You trust yourself enough to figure things out along the way. So if you've been waiting to feel confident before you start, I want you to remember this. The confident version of you is not hiding somewhere in the future waiting to appear. That person is built through action. One uncomfortable conversation, one brave decision, one small promise kept, one imperfect attempt, one step at a time. Confidence is not the ticket that allows you to enter the arena. Confidence is the souvenir you collect after you've been there. So stop waiting for confidence. Stop chasing confidence. Stop demanding confidence before action. Instead, collect evidence. Choose curiosity, accept looking foolish, measure progress, build trust with yourself, and one day you'll look back and realize something remarkable. You became confident without ever trying to. Because confidence was never the goal. Growth was. And confidence simply came along for the ride.